The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we'll review Austin FC's home and season opener, a big 5-0 win against FC Cincinnati. We're also going to have a really fun interview with Matt Doyle of MLSsoccer.com and Extra Time. My name's Landon Cottom, and I'm joined as always by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley. And I know we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, so I don't think we're going to spend a whole long time on sort of opening remarks and comments. But I do want to invite everybody to join us today, for most of you, on Tuesday at 6 p.m. at Turnstile Brewing to come out and hang out with us when we do a little live show and talk some Austin FC with Pam Cato from Craft Beer Austin. I think we're going to learn about Texas Beer Company, and it'll just be a fun time to hang out on the patio and enjoy spring weather again after we had some super cold weather over the weekend.
Yeah, we did a couple of events with Pam last year, and a lot of fun, just kind of a little panel/Q&A thing. So come and ask us questions about Austin FC, ask us questions about really whatever else you want to, because we're not screening these questions, so you can get away with whatever you want pretty much. We also want to remind you that Swoon Tower Soccer came out on Friday. I say this in that episode, we understand that Swoon Tower is not going to be for everyone. That's why we put it in its own episode. But the people who it is for, it's very much for them. And we already have some very diehard fans of Swoon Tower Soccer. So give that a listen. We're also running the Fan Vote Smile tournament on Twitter this week. So first round ran on Monday. The second round will go on Tuesday, and we'll be running that through the rest of the week. So listen to that episode and then get on Twitter and vote for your favorite Austin FC smiles.
I want to jump in. I was one of the people that voted. I voted this morning. It was pretty early on, and I was happy with how many people had already gotten in ahead of me. I didn't know what to expect. You never know what to expect from a Twitter poll in terms of participation, but there were a lot of folks that had interest in how those turned out. And I had a couple picks that were different from what y'all did on the show, so I'm interested to see what the people think about the best smiles on the team.
Another announcement, we kind of hinted at this on a show a few weeks ago, but we are officially launching our Patreon. So for folks who don't know, Patreon is essentially a way for people to support the artists or content creators that they like, and it's by way of monthly subscriptions. And so the way ours is going to be set up, we'll have three different membership levels. So the bottom tier is the supporter tier at $2 a month. What you'll get is our eternal thanks, and then you'll also get access to patron-only posts where we'll give updates on plans for the show. We'll ask for some input and feedback. We'll probably, whenever we get some cool interviews lined up, we'll probably let you guys know a little bit before, maybe ask for some questions from our patrons. And then occasionally, we're not going to promise a lot of this, but we will occasionally be posting some bonus content, maybe some writing from Jeremiah, maybe some video content occasionally. But this supporter tier, this $2 a month tier, I think is a way to think of it as like a tip jar, kind of like you appreciate what we do and you want us to be able to continue doing it as regularly as we do it. The next tier up is the starting 11, $5 a month. What you'll get is everything you got with the $2 a month tier, plus a Moon Tower Soccer koozie and some Moon Tower Soccer stickers. And then the top tier is going to be the captain tier at $10 a month. What you get there is everything you get in the first two tiers, plus a Moon Tower Soccer enamel pin. And then we're also, for the $10 a month subscribers, we're going to guarantee one question per month answered on a show. And so we want to reassure you that these shows will always be free. We're not going to charge for the shows. So if you don't have the disposable income to become a patron, totally fine. These shows are always going to be free. If you still want to support the show and don't have a couple extra bucks, then tell a friend about the show. Help spread the word. We appreciate that just as greatly. But if you do have a couple of extra bucks, we would greatly appreciate you becoming a member of our Patreon and helping us out a little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited about being able to do that. And I think it'll be cool to do. But like you said, I mean, it's really important that the community is the most important thing about all this. And so we enjoy that. We enjoy the folks that have supported us. I think we've told Marcelo Tesson that we will try to pronounce Argentinian teams in the right way in order to make sure that he continues that he joins us. I think that was one of his requirements.
At $20 a month, I will pronounce any word however you want me to.
There you go. That's a beautiful addition. So yeah, we look forward to being able to do that and add a little content.
All right, let's jump into the Austin FC season opener. A big 5-0 win versus FC Cincinnati. This was a fun one, Jeremiah. And leading up to the game, Austin FC released one of their always amazing hype videos. They just hit every time. Every video thing they release is amazing. And this one was a little bit special to us because it featured the voices of our two favorite podcasters, us.
Right, yeah. And I liked it. It featured me saying that Josh Wolf needs to learn. I don't know if he's capable of it. Right when it faded to black, and then Josh Wolf said you could find negativity everywhere. So it's a really dramatic moment there, you know. So I mean, it was good. It was cool to find that out, to be included with that. I had Aggie from the Fighting Leslie's texted me. He's like, "Hey, I heard your voice on the new video this afternoon," and I had no idea what he was talking about. So I had to go out and find it. And I was like, "Oh, yep, that's me. That's Landon. Here we are."
Yeah, I had a busy day at work that day too, and I hadn't seen it yet until you texted me. I turned it on, but yeah, it was kind of fun to get cast as the semi villains in the video.
And the game, like I'm very happy to be wrong about it so far. Like that was the best part of it, is that so far we're in great shape. The best team in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. So I think the biggest questions leading into this game were, I mean, partially the weather. Like, what was the weather going to be? We expected it to be bad, and it was kind of bad. Not as bad as it could have been, but it was not good either. It was very cold, raining most of the day, but ended up not having downpours, had some decent breaks in the rain. So it didn't hinder the day too much. I say the cold was worse than the wetness.
It was. And I wondered a little bit how that would affect the play on the field. And I mean, it did not, you know, because I mean, it was wet. Because it had rained. It didn't rain a lot, but it rained that morning. I think maybe it rained the day before, but like you couldn't tell from the play on the field. Like it was not a heavy ball. You know, the guys could do all the things. The turf held up really well. You know, there weren't big chunks coming out or anything. So I was pleasantly surprised by sort of how it didn't affect the match day experience.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought everything looked okay. I think the other big question was who was going to start? How many of the new guys would we see? So we ended up seeing, I guess, 2 or 3 debutants for Austin FC as far as MLS games go. We'll get into that starting lineup here in a little bit. Another thing that I wasn't quite sure about was the attendance. Were you concerned about turnout due to the weather?
I was a little concerned about turnout overall. I was not concerned about whether the South End would be full, but just from reading the Facebook group and Reddit and Twitter, like it seemed like there were and talking to other people who are maybe not quite as dedicated. It seemed like there were people that were looking to offload their tickets. You know, I know the prices sort of collapsed a little, didn't collapse, but they were going down on SeatGeek the closer it got to the game. So I was a little worried about the attendance. And I thought it was great. I mean, not every seat was full, really but it was really strong. You know, it was very, very full. It was a late arriving crowd, right? People didn't show up an hour early to stand in the cold, but by 10 minutes before the match, it was mostly full.
Yeah, a couple of little bald patches here and there, but I could even see, like, in that north end, people standing up along the concourse. I don't know if they were more protected from the rain up there once it started raining in the second half or what, but I thought the turnout ended up being really good. The south end was rocking and packed. So, like, every once in a while in a game on the south end, you can see those corners aren't entirely full, but it was packed to the gills, even up into those top corners up there.
Yeah, and one thing on the broadcast, like the angle was a little bit different, and it was drawn back a little bit. I think it was kind of from the north, maybe the northwest corner, but you could just when the action was in the south end, you could just kind of see that south end like pulse. It was amazing, just like waves of bodies jumping up and down and moving and all those things. Like that was a great environment. The other thing on the south end that we got to see a little bit was the debut. I guess it was the first official preseason like pregame show with Adrian and Mike there in the southwest corner in the booth they set up, which is really cool to be able to stand and watch. And there were a bunch of people that sort of stood around and checked out the pre-match show, which started 30 minutes before the match and ended up on TV, which is a nice addition this season. I know some folks were a little bit worried originally about how much commitment there was to like the overall broadcast experience beyond the game, but they've really stepped it up this year.
Yeah, and I didn't get a chance to watch it until afterwards, but I think they're doing a really good job. It's like quality content and worth watching. So they're going to be doing that stuff for away games.
Yeah, they're going to do it from away games. They're not going to do it from there, but
like
yeah,
the locally broadcast away games, I guess. But yeah, I'll definitely be tuning into those. And then for the ones that we've seen so far, I've gone back and watched them after the fact, and it's been worth my while. So well done. All right, so jumping into the starting 11, we kind of referenced this a bit, but we saw there were really just a couple of spots that we weren't sure about. So we saw Brad Stuver in goal, Jean Kolmanich at left back, and the center backs was one of the big question marks. So we ended up seeing Kip Keller and Julio Cascante. We didn't think we'd see Ruben, but like last week we said like surely that we're not going to see Ruben. And then as the week went on, I was like, maybe we'll get to see Ruben. He didn't start. He came in the 65th minute and got some minutes in, but Kip and Julio started it out. Nick Lima at right back. The other one that we kind of questioned, we kind of thought Dani Pereira was going to start the 6, and that's what we ended up seeing. And then Ring and Driussi ahead of him, then Cecilio, Urruti, and Fagundes on the front line. Any other, no other surprises there, right? The rest of them we pretty much expected.
Yeah, not really, but I think we didn't think we were going to see Ruben because we thought we were going to see some Johan Romagna, and Romagna not even being a healthy scratch and not even making the roster for the first match, I think was a little bit surprising to me.
That's right. We talked about this last week that there's going to be some tough decisions going into this, like the roster decisions, and that some bigger names on this team were not going to be on the bench. And so some of those guys were Johan Romagna, Jared Stroud was not on the bench. I think those are probably the two big ones, right? Was there anybody else that you were surprised to not see there?
No, it was really probably those two. And it seemed like Josh was continuing trying to send a message to Romagna with his omission about that last week, when that it was really about sort of fitness and preparation. When we thought maybe he was injured, but it turned out that he wasn't hurt that bad. It was just kind of cramped. So, I mean, hopefully he responds the right way to that. Another thing that I thought was, we ended up getting 5 subs, and we saw a lot of new guys along with that. So I feel like there's lots of people that got their first chance to see like Austin FC action in this match because Gabriel come in, Valencia, Felipe, and Ethan Finley all got action in substitutes. They broke them right in.
Yeah, which is to have, I think I've talked about this too much at this point, but to have those guys coming on. I looked back at some of the early games from last year. The guys we were bringing on in those first 5 or 6 games were Sebastian Berhalter, Aiden Stanley, Kakuta Mane. To go from that to bringing on Ethan Finley, Johan Valencia, Felipe Martins, like these guys are a step above what some of our starters were last year, and now we have these guys coming off the bench. That's amazing. So going into the first goal here, we'll run through the goals and we'll kind of go through and talk about certain player performances we wanted to highlight. But first goal was in the 2nd minute. Jean Kolmanich was taking a free kick from pretty deep on the left side. He plays it in kind of hard towards the penalty spot. First Cincy player comes up and just kind of whiffs it. Several other players are ball watching and the ball just kind of bounces past them. Nobody even sees Cecilio Dominguez arriving at the back post and smashes it in. So a little bit fortunate for Austin there. I think Cincinnati could have and should have done a lot better on it, but Austin capitalized on it, which was good to see. Second goal was in the 14th minute. It was a period of like pretty sustained pressure from Austin, like pretty long period of possession with several shots, blocked shots and saves and stuff, and finally led to a corner. The original service was punched away by Alec Khan, the goalkeeper, won by Lima at the top of the box, who plays a really clever ball over the top to Ring, who was running in behind to the back post. Ring is one-on-one with the keeper and winds up to smash the ball and kind of scuffs it. And it just like bounces on the turf and then just
kind of bounced over the keeper's head, right? Because I don't think anybody expected the ball to go that way. Ring clearly was not trying to play that shot that way, for sure.
Yeah, it seemed like it moved so slow, but Khan, the keeper, had already kind of left his feet to try to save the ball low, and he just couldn't do anything. So he's like falling and just had to watch the ball go over his head and land in the goal. So well worked. The rest of it well worked. A little bit fortunate with the finish there, because Ring at least made enough contact there that it was so little contact that it was like deceptive and ended up being helpful in the end, but not what he meant to do. The third goal was the 43rd minute. Another long spell of possession. Diego found Driussi in the box. Diego is out wide right, finds Driussi in the box. He backheels it to Ring, who then backheels it to Diego, who had continued his run. Diego cuts it back to find Driussi, who did really well. Driussi was offside after a bit, did really well to kind of track back and get in position to receive it again. Receives it, turns, lets the ball run, hits it really hard, low and right at Khan. And I don't know that he meant this. I think he was trying to hit it just inside that near post, but it goes in between Khan's feet, off of his right foot and into the goal. That's not the last time a ball will go off of Khan's right foot and into the goal. We'll get to that one in a second. But I thought that was really well worked. Again, Cincinnati probably should have defended it a little bit better, but it's really encouraging to see them just trying stuff like that even.
Yeah, that buildup was amazing. I mean, how many times have you watched that video? The
several
13-second clip. Every time it comes up or somebody retweets whatever, I'm like, yes, that is amazing. And it was good to see, all like the connection. And I think it just kind of shows that this is something that I think Josh talked about too. Like, good players find good players, and it's just like the ways that Ring and Driussi and Diego work together are just something that we didn't see last year, and it's super encouraging. And I know there's differing opinions on whether Alex Ring like really is like that offensive player, but like just seeing those guys working that ball sequence is the best that you can hope for out of Austin. Yeah,
and that quote from Wolf is he was specifically talking about Ring and Driussi, right? And just they really do seem to have like a special chemistry. They find each other and are just looking for each other. And I think there's just like that like nod, right? That like I think they see each other and like, you're a real footballer. I'm going to play with you. And not to say that they think the other guys are bad, but I think they're just like, they both have that kind of next level mentality. And I don't know that Ring necessarily executes it all as smoothly or as cleanly as some other players might, but the fact that he has that IQ and like that on-field intelligence, I think that's a lot of why him and Driussi link up so well. Next goal is in the 61st minute. This is Cincinnati just made a couple of their first substitutions. There's a throw in. Ring just kind of taps it back to Ring was under pressure and he just kind of like pokes it back to Dani. Dani, without even thinking twice, just winds up, boots it upfield over the top to Driussi, who outruns Jeff Cameron and just kind of gets his ball in between, or gets his body in between Cameron and the ball, runs into the box long enough to make the keeper kind of commit, taps it over to Cecilio, who none of the other defenders seemed to even notice was running up the backside, and Cecilio buries it. And so Cecilio had missed a chance not long before this. Maybe, I don't know, I think it was in the second half, but Urruti set him up really well on the backside for a pretty much an open net, and Cecilio hit it into the south end stands. And so I was glad to see him get a similar chance again and finish this one.
That ball from Dani was amazing. Like, I don't even,
it was
like, I don't know what, well, on the broadcast, because the camera was running a little behind. I mean, I in the moment didn't even know who it was. Like, I watched like 3 times to see, because you just see this ball launch like in the perfect position, and for him to have that kind of creativity or to take that kind of shot is really impressive, because there's a lot of other things that could have happened there, and to have that like intelligence to think like, you know what, I'm going to lay this ball, I don't know, 30 yards downfield for Driussi to run it under was amazing.
I think it's a thing that they're being told to look for. Like, they've been drilling this. I watched this sequence several times through the game where one of the tins will drop in to support the build-up play. As they swing it to the other side, the other tin runs long. And so like the 6 will drop in, the wingers like Cecilio will drop in to support, and Ring will run long. Or if Ring drops in, they'll swing it the other way, and Driussi will run long. And they're looking for that long pass as it gets over to the fullback, where they would have just looked for a short, like one-touch pass last year. They're looking for that deep ball this year. And so I think it comes from that probably. But I look to see if Driussi and Dani were looking at each other, communicating before that, and I didn't see it, but Driussi is stretching that front line. So him and Urruti are both on that right side, pushed up really high and just like kind of ready for it. And so I don't know that they like said anything to each other, but I think it is a thing that they were told to look for. And so to see the ball come in there and Dani didn't think about it. It wasn't panicked. It was like, yep, this is what I'm doing. Boom. And just smashed it. And it was a really great ball. But I thought that was great. The last goal comes in the 93rd minute. So it was a really nice ball slipped through by Felipe for Musa, who was running up the right side. So he gets into space. A defender was able to kind of catch up to him and is trying to close him down on the end line. Musa just kind of flicks it over one side, like flicks it past him on one side and runs around. And then he's in on the keeper right there on the touchline again. He tries to smash it really low to Diego, who's crashing the box, but it catches, again, Alex Kahn's right foot and goes into the goal. And so the angle it was on, his shot was not actually on target. So I think it was actually given as an Alec Kahn own goal, which I think is fair, but very much so created by that pass by Felipe and then that creativity from Musa at the end. So really well earned.
Yeah, that was one. You hate to see him not get the goal, but to your point, that was kind of like the Pochettino's second goal when he was Player of the Week last year that he managed to get. He managed to keep, where that ball was probably not bound for the net, unless.
But he still created it and like deserved it.
Yeah, so hopefully there'll be other chances for Musa to get it, because it was all him up until the very last moment.
Yeah. So 5-0. Fans are excited, and I think to a degree deserve to be, right? Like beating anybody 5-0 is a big deal. That being said, Cincinnati looks pretty bad. And also, I don't know that I would call this a great performance by Austin FC either, which is strange to say, but there are things that could be improved. One of the things I think is the center back still looked a little bit vulnerable at times. Cincinnati played 4-4-2 with like a diamond in the midfield and then 2 big strikers up top. And they were very often looking to play long balls into those big strikers, and it worked a lot of the times. And if it weren't for very poor finishing by those 2 guys, especially Brandon Vasquez, it very easily could have been 2-1 Cincinnati early in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe when we talk about individual players, we can get into this a little bit more, because Julio kind of had a Julio game, but Kip Keller was both very good and left me feeling very nervous at the same time. And I don't know if going down the road, like if you can have those 2 guys in together because of that, like that's. You need a steady hand. I don't know that either of them are that steady hand.
Yeah. Is there any other reasons you could see to not be so excited or like to temper the excitement?
I mean, all the things broke right for us. Like we converted our chances. The other Cincinnati got caught ball watching. Like the weird things that happened worked out for us, like Rings kick. But I feel like all those things ended up on the other side next year. And there were so many games like last year. I mean, so many games last year where it's like, oh, well, we dominated, we had more possession, the X goals were even, or we were ahead in X goals, they didn't pan out. So you know what? It's about time that things break our way. And I feel like if you're a good and deep team, this is like such a sports cliche, but you end up making your own luck. And I feel like that's kind of what Austin did. Like if you throw enough guys in the box and you're relentless enough in the attack, I think things are going to break your way. So it's still Cincinnati. And maybe, next week, Miami's probably pretty bad too. Maybe it'll still be like, it's just Cincinnati and Miami, but I think we should just go full steam on ahead. I'm thinking that this is like a fundamentally different team this year, given what we saw last week.
Yeah, so I think we just mentioned some reasons maybe to temper excitement, but I think there are reasons to be excited as well. I think last year we played down to bad teams pretty regularly. If we were playing a team that was on our level or worse than us, we would kind of play that way, and that didn't happen. We played against a bad Cincinnati team and we rocked them. Like, although some of the goals were a little bit fluky and maybe they should have scored some, most of them were from well-worked positions and really well-earned positions that maybe one little thing broke our way, but it wasn't entirely luck. So I think that's something to be positive about. The players were just playing with flair and confidence and a fight that we did not see very often last year. I don't know that our players looked confident, especially attacking last year very often.
Yeah, I would say they were doing a lot of like playing and not thinking about what they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right? They were just living in the moment and reacting and moving and not just. There was less of Devin's like triangle of passing sadness or whatever.
The horseshoe of sadness.
The horseshoe of sadness. There was less of that, and it was more like it just came naturally, and they were doing what came to them and just sort of playing the sport.
I think another thing is, we already talked about the depth a little bit, but I think tactically there are things to be encouraged by as well. We had the big question, the question that got us cast as the baddies in the hype video, but will Josh Wolf adapt? Is he humble enough to learn and adapt from mistakes and things that didn't work from last season? I think we're seeing that he is. We talked about looking for those long balls, being a bit more pragmatic in the buildup, and then also just like not playing a bit more direct, like not only the long balls, but just like going whenever there's moments to break forward, taking those moments, because the first half, even though we were up 3-0 at halftime, I think possession was like 51-49 in favor of Austin. And so it's not like we were just passing the ball around. We were passing with intention and with conviction, and like we're going to do something with it. And so I think, like you said, they were playing. It wasn't just going through some motions. They were doing things with a purpose, and then whenever the opportunity presented itself, they were playing soccer and trying to do something good with the ball.
Yeah, it's like you mentioned with Cecilio, where he had some opportunities. It's not like we converted every single chance either. There were multiple chances that we had that we didn't convert, and it was just we created so many more than Cincinnati, like they panned out.
Yeah, Cecilio, the one that, so expected goals. Again, I think it's a new season, so I'll put this caveat on here that expected goals is a stat meant to be used over long periods of time, and so is not always super useful in a single game context, but it's still a little bit useful in a single game context. But XG in this game ended up being, Austin was like just over 3. Cincinnati was 1.3. And so that's still a little bit high, going back to kind of the negatives and where Austin can still improve. But yeah, that miss by Cecilio is like 0.3. So it's like a 30% chance of scoring, which he really should make. But lots of really good looks. I think it was 19 total shots, 5 shots on target. One of which was not the goal. So like Musa's shot was not on target, but went in.
That's true.
But yeah, just some really encouraging things. And looking at before the game in this the pregame show, Mike LaHood will do what he calls the LaHood mood, and he kind of gives his keys to the game. And what he said was, wide play. So switching the ball against the narrow Cincinnati shape. They play that diamond, so there's some space on the outside to be exploited. I thought the midfielders, especially Dani, did a really good job of whenever it was swinging around. They would receive it, look over to that far side, and play the ball quickly. And then the whole team would push up in transition right there. That worked really well. Defensive transition, again, I think we could do better at this, but there's a fight there and like a commitment to it that we didn't always see last year, which was really encouraging. And then the last point was the first goal, which Austin FC got the first goal very early, which I think really helped kind of dictate the pace of the rest of the game.
Well, as Josh Wolf says, goals change games.
Exactly.
So many times last year. It was always after we didn't score the first goal.
Let's talk about a few individual player performances. So Kip Keller, I've seen a lot of people be super high on Kip Keller. Deservedly so. Young guy, promising guy. And we're going to get into this a little bit with Matt Doyle later on. I thought he was really solid, some really good moments, but also had a few shaky moments, and probably could have been a little bit better. And there's actually a good friend of mine, Kevin Morris, who many of you probably follow on Twitter. He tweeted that Keller had a very good pro debut, and I think some fans overrated his performance a little bit. He was shaky at times. That said, all of his upside was visible too. Excellent passing range, high soccer IQ, elite athlete, should keep getting starts. I think that's spot on. I think you see the upside. He's not all the way there yet, but I think the mistakes that he's making are no worse than what our starters were making last year. And so I see no reason, even though I'm like trying to temper the expectations here a little bit, I think Kip Keller should continue starting for this team.
Yeah, I'm not gonna disagree with that. I mean, he does the stuff that people love too. I think that's all you get these big reactions, right? Like he makes the big tackles. He made a great tackle after he got a yellow. You know, he's a physical player and he's confident. You know, he was like jumping. He was right in the middle of the pile after the goal and stuff. Like he does all the things that people love to see. But he definitely has some stuff to work on.
Yeah, he's a little bit like over eager to go after a play sometimes, which pulls him out of position. And we got exposed a little bit, and like a better team will expose us and punish us for things like that. So it's things that he'll learn. He seems to be a willing learner as well. So it's things he'll learn, but just the mentality, the IQ is there. He just needs some experience, which hopefully he'll have in 10 games. He's not going to be perfect in 10 games, but I think with just a handful of MLS games under his belt, he'll improve greatly. Next one, another young guy, Dani Pereira, which I saw somebody told me this a few weeks ago, and then I saw someone post it in Los Verdes Slack the other day. But Kip Keller and Dani Pereira were born on the same day in the same year.
I saw that. I did not verify that, but I mean, I can't imagine somebody would make that up, but that's incredible. Hell of a job, Claudio, from our two generation Adidas Super Draft picks who are the exact same age.
But I thought Dani had a fantastic game. I thought he was so good. He heard all of us saying over the last few weeks that, oh yeah, Dani will probably start the first game, but Valencia is going to start pretty soon after that. And he's like, nope, I'm not going to let that happen, and just balled out. He was really good. Played really aggressively in defensive transition, went really hard into 50-50s, was letting those midfielders know that he was there and wasn't going to let them just turn around and play the ball easily. I think physically, and this is something else we'll get into with Matt Doyle in that interview, but I think physically it's always going to be really difficult for him to be a dominant defensive midfielder. But with the mentality that he's showing and the work ethic that he's showing, if you add that on top of what he's capable of offensively, he's always going to have a spot on the field. Like I think Valencia might take that starting spot from him for certain games or permanently. But Dani Pereira has shown that he is an asset to this team, and he's going to get minutes, whether it's spelling other players or as a starter. But he's been very good in the last 2 games we've seen him play. Other player I want to talk about is Sebastian Driussi. He actually had some pretty poor moments that we've not really seen him have. He gave the ball away pretty needlessly a few times, and in like a couple of times in some dangerous positions where he just like a little bit careless or maybe a little bit overconfident and just gave it to Cincinnati. That being said, he was still one of the best players on the field. I think both of those things can be true. That everything else he did was mostly so good that like you easily forgive these other things. And also, like I said, we haven't really seen him do that before. Maxi Urruti, only 2 shots, but worked really hard in the press, worked really hard defensively, was making these runs to stretch the back line and kind of open up some space in the midfield. So I thought even though he didn't have a lot of offensive production, he did have the pass that the goal that Cecilio didn't score, that would have been an assist from Maxi there. But I thought he was still very useful to have on the field, even though he didn't have a ton of offensive production. And then Cecilio Dominguez, MLS Team of the Week, 2 goals. I thought exactly what we've been talking about. He played his role really well. He's not having to be the guy, not having to be the playmaker, and he seems to be settling into that really well. So I think, like, within his role, I think he had some really well-placed and effective shithousing with some of the times that he went down. I feel like 2 times where Cecilio laid down on the ground for a little bit longer than some people maybe wanted him to. It was when Cincinnati maybe had a little bit of momentum or the game was getting a little bit frantic, and it kind of like helped to calm the game down. I don't know if that's intentional by Cecilio, but if it was, like, bravo.
It works out. Yeah, there was one time when I actually got legitimately worried about him because he did come off the field for a moment.
Yeah.
Once. And I was like, oh no, it's just like the boy who cried wolf. He's actually hurt this time. But yeah, I mean, what a game. So he was on the player of the week. He was on the team of the week. You know, your point on Driussi, I saw on the, I think it's FotMob has like their just like player ratings, best 11, and they had Driussi in their best 11 for the week. Like he was on the MLS official team, but he like an 8.1 or whatever he got from them. So, I mean, even with what he did, he had a great week.
Yeah, I think I honestly would have picked Driussi as my man of the match. I think he ended up with, was it 2 assists and a goal? Or maybe
I think it ended up just being one goal and 1 assist.
Okay, but was like very involved in some of the other really key plays there. And I forgot to add this into the show notes, but I captained him on my fantasy team. And so I wanted to give an update on the Moon Tower Soccer Fantasy League. I think I'm in like 7th or 11th place, so not terrible, but not great. But I wanted to give a shout out to, I'm in 11th place right now. Did you check to see how you're doing, Jeremiah?
I'm very middle of the pack in both of those leagues. Both the Austin FC League, the Los Verdes League, and the Moon Tower League.
But the top points earner this week, actually it's a tie. So Verde Points Haver and Korper Verlutzung FC, both with 117 points. I was very proud of my 98 points or whatever I got, and then looked up how much other folks were getting, and they put me to shame a little bit. But congrats to those folks for leading the league this week.
Well, one of the quotes I picked up, because we talked about the midfield sort of collectively, and Alex Ring, dressed like a Bond villain, was in the post-game press conference. But
He
I
was
thought it
looking
really
sharp,
good.
man.
He was. One of the things he said was, I think my attributes are complimentary of Seba and Danny today. I think it's important, especially in the midfield, to have the right mix, and I enjoy the freedom to go up top. I hope we continue this way. And I feel like that was the best summary of the way that they all played together today. And maybe that's why they should continue playing that way down the road, you know? I mean, if things don't work out the way that we all thought it would because Danny is playing really well, that's probably not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, absolutely not. All right, what about the subs? So Gabrielson got, was it like 25 minutes? He looked
Gabrielson and Ethan Finley both got 25 minutes.
Yeah, they both, I think Finley was like that game killing game killing sub. I think the role that Stroud ended up playing pretty well at the end of the season last year in a couple of games. I see Finley as an upgrade to that. I think Finley's a better player than him, a similar type of player, just like a bit more refined. Gabrielson, I looked a little bit unsure at times, but I think you could see what he's capable of. A few like pretty clever little passes. His physicality and athleticism, I think you could see even if he was a little bit unsure at times. I am ready to see the starting center back pairing of Gabrielson and Keller in maybe this coming weekend, but if not, then soon. And I think we will see it soon. But I'm excited to see what this back line looks like with those two fit and like with a few games under their belts to really be feeling confident.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think like Felipe played the role you want Felipe to play.
Absolutely.
Come in late, occupy some space, cause trouble. I mean,
kick some guys.
Yeah, kick some guys. I mean, GT did that too. Like GT was an change of pace spark. I mean, we didn't need a change of pace spark at the end of that one, but like he adds something different that I think he can do really well, at least at this point, for like 15 or 20 minutes, but not 90. And I think the way that people are aligned really well sets him up to succeed. That Arruti can kind of wear people down, moving around and moving the ball, and then he can just like attack.
Yeah, and Gite's hold-up play as well, I think, could be really valuable when you're trying to kill a game off like that. Just, you have that outlet valve if you're in trouble. Just play it at Musa's head, and he will, 99% of the time, bring it down on his chest and be able to at least hold the ball up until somebody else can get up to support. That part of his game is really, really strong. So that's something really awesome to be able to have that in your toolkit to bring out. Anything else about the Cincinnati game, Jeremiah?
No, I think to summarize it, I quoted one of the Logans because there's at least 3 Logans that follow us on Twitter. I don't remember which one this one was. But, best goddamn team in the world is where we are.
Oh, it was Logan Bartlett, who I met for the first time the other day at Hop Squad.
Okay, cool. That's good. One of the other Logans is dressed as an avocado, who I also met for the first time at Hop Squad. So I think that was Logan Jones.
I saw the Logans all talking to each other at Hop Squad, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go talk to all the Logans while they're together. And I was like, what should you call a group of Logans? And my wife suggested a murder, so they're now the murder of Logans.
Awesome.
All right, well, we are going to take a quick break, then we'll come back with that interview with Matt Doyle. For those of you who don't know, Matt Doyle is really experienced and really good writer for MLSsoccer.com. Also hosts one of the co-hosts on Extra Time, which is the MLS podcast. I am a big Matt Doyle fan. I've learned so much from him over the last few years and really respect what he does. So I was really excited and honored that he would take some time to hang out with us and talk. And I was really happy with how this interview went. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with Matt Doyle.
Austin's newest spot to enjoy food, fun, and football is now open. The Pitch, located next to Austin FC's training facility at 13,000 Harris Ridge Boulevard, has a little something for every fan.
You can order from 4 different kitchens with unique cuisines, serving locally sourced food as well as a selection of local beer and craft cocktails. Or just settle down in front of one of their 35 big screen TVs to watch our Austin FC when they're on the road.
So have you been to one of the opening events there?
Not to the events. I went after the Chicago preseason friendly. I went over and me and Chris Bills had some tacos and a beer.
Okay, well it's good. So they're open 11 to 8, Tuesday to Saturday right now, and you can visit pitchaustin.com for more. And I will also say that Jackson Bentley says that they make the best chicken quesadilla that he's ever eaten in his life, and that boy has eaten some chicken quesadillas.
I don't know if Chris sent you this photo, but Chris Bills actually got the chicken quesadilla. And whenever he ordered it, you had already told us this about Jackson. And I was like, I understand now why he thinks, like, I thought it was hyperbole, but this is a special chicken quesadilla. So I think it's like, 3 or 4 different places you can get food from. I thought it was really cool. So definitely go check it out. You can get a 10% discount by entering the word GOAL, that's GOAL, in the promo code field in the mobile ordering app on your next visit. Jeremiah, I haven't said this in a while, but let's talk about hot sauce.
I'm very excited to talk about hot sauce. And if we're talking about hot sauce, we're talking about Teardrop Pepper Company hot sauce. Teardrop Pepper Company has finally created the perfect recipe right here in Austin, Texas. Their all-natural, award-winning hot sauce has a delicious blend of flavor and heat, enhancing your favorite foods and leaving you wanting more.
Whether you like the zesty kick of golden habanero or the garlicky smoothness of supreme serrano, it's the best way to spice up your Austin FC pre-match meals.
Teardrop Pepper Company has 2 unique flavors available, and you can order from their website, teardroppeppercro.com, or from their social media pages. And you're about to get to use it to read an offer code again, aren't you?
I am. Use the offer code GOAL, GOAL, to save 10% off your order. Put it on everything, they'll make more. All right, we are joined by Matt Doyle from MLSsoccer.com and the Extra Time podcast. Matt, thanks so much for joining us, man.
It's my pleasure to be on, fellas.
So I reached out to you a while back to see if we could schedule something, and we kept catching you either at extremely busy times for MLSsoccer.com or while you're on vacation. So did you get to do something fun in the off season? I know during the season y'all are super busy, and so did you get to do anything relaxing during that time?
Not really.
Oh no.
For like the off season was really short this year. This is February 26th is the earliest the MLS season has ever kicked off, for one, and for two, the MLS Cup was on the 12th of December, and then right after MLS Cup, there's the re-entry draft, and there was expansion draft, and all of that kind of just keeps sort of snowballing into the super draft itself. And then, oh, by the way, there's a U.S. national team camp, and then there's World Cup qualifiers. Preseason's all, so there was no off season. To answer your question, there was no, and then of course in the midst of all that, there was the Omicron surge, which I still haven't gotten COVID, and I'm trying not to get COVID. So I was being very diligent about saying, okay, you know what, I'll just see it through another winter. And so I sat at home and I did a lot of work, and I watched a lot of Netflix this off season. So that was it. Yeah.
What do you have a particular Netflix thing you'd recommend? And that was your only brief respite?
Yeah. It's not Netflix, but it's actually, I think it's on Hulu. But we have a friend with Plex, so we borrow a lot of the media that we stream. It's called The Great. It's a fictionalized account of Catherine the Great as ruler of Russia in the 1700s. It is absolutely, particularly the first season, but the show itself is absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend it.
All right. So listeners who aren't familiar with Matt, how long have you been covering MLS? A long time now, right?
Yeah. So I've been in this job for a dozen years. I've been covering the league in one form or another since 1996, since the league started. So it's been more than a quarter century, a long time.
Yeah. So because of that, you have a lot of experience watching this league, a lot of contextual knowledge to look at Austin FC through. And so we're excited to get to talk to you because we pay a lot of attention and know a lot of the ins and outs of the day-to-day of this team. But we've really only been in the MLS weeds for about 2 years at this point, 2.5 years. We started ramping up before. But really just wanted to kind of get your take on that. So
this is from the season preview stuff. So we went through your 2022 season preview. You had Austin in Tier 5, and I don't remember what the specific definition of that was, but it was something like murky waters or whatever, around Dallas and some other clubs in that range. So the upside of that seemed to center on how the Austin FC front office approached this offseason. Can you expand kind of on like the good part of what you saw out of Claudio and gang during this brief offseason?
I think the good part is that they were very clear-eyed on what the team needed after last year. And last year, the expansion season, I think, was promising in a lot of ways, but it was pretty bad in a couple of very obvious ways. And those very obvious ways were they had no team speed through central midfield, very, I think, limited ball-winning capacity through central midfield, and the center back rotation was kind of a disaster. And they went out and addressed that. Now, Johan Valencia didn't start in this first game. It was against FC Cincinnati, so you kind of don't need him. And it's very early days on Kip Keller and Ruben Gabrielson. So who knows if those are actually the right pickups. But the fact that they targeted the two spots that they obviously needed to target leads me to believe that they saw the same things that I did. And obviously, if they're seeing the same things that I'm seeing, they must be very smart.
They're perfect. Absolutely. They followed the league for 26 years, played in it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately, I think you ended up picking them around 12th or so. Do you think that's more of a lack of progress from Austin or a statement on the rest of the West? Like, I feel like the West got a lot better around them, even with what Austin did.
Yeah, there's teams like 3 through 12 in the West. You could just put them on. They could throw a dart. Like you could talk me into any of them. Having the type of season where suddenly they're 55, 60 points, and you're talking about maybe a home playoff game, and you could talk me into any of them. Like a key guy gets hurt, or somebody suddenly old, or somebody underperforms, and now we're talking about them on 40 points, and like, oh crap, maybe we need to blow it up. In Austin's case, as impressed as I am in the theory in terms of what they went after this offseason, this is still a 32 point team last year. Like, I need to see more than theory before I buy that they're suddenly going to be very good. And the other part of it is that while they did get some striker depth, if you've been around the league for a while, there's a reason Maxi Urruti's been on 15 different teams. Right? He's a very, very good defensive forward. He presses like mad. He can pass the ball some. His shot pass decision-making process has needed recalibration for a decade. He is like, he will just shoot from anywhere, and it's like he kills transition moments. And he'll often kill buildup because he's just so selfish in those moments. And so while I think that they did right by getting another forward, if you're starting Maxi Urruti, I'm not going to pick you too high. That's just, until I see reason to think otherwise, I just cannot get on that train.
He only took 2 shots the other night against Cincinnati, but
Yeah,
I think that's more.
That.
Yeah. There was one moment I remember specifically that I yelled. Maxi had it 25 yards out, and I yelled shoot, and he passed it to somebody. And I was like, whoa, maybe this is a different Maxi, but it's one game, so I'm not going to get my hopes up yet.
Yeah, I joked a few years back that the league should change the logo to Maxi winding up to shoot from 35 yards out.
Yeah, I had my son really into it and ready for that. That's kind of what I warned him about. But it was cold too. Maybe his shooting leg wasn't warmed up too much yet. One of the players that you talked about that we think is probably the biggest key to Austin getting a lot better is Sebastian Driussi, and having a whole season with him. And I think you mentioned that you had him as maybe a sleeper, like MLS Best 11 player. Like, what do you see in him so far that makes you think that?
I think he's clever about what he can do with the ball, and he's pretty brave about wanting to get on the ball in the attacking third. Like, he's willing to get on the ball in the toughest and most, the highest leverage spots on the field. And if you have that and you have some skill, and you're willing to do some running off the ball, which he is, and not all 10s are willing to do that. That's a pretty good mixture right there. So I it's almost like the Hani Mukhtar thing, where if you watch him play just once, maybe you don't see it, you don't get the whole package, and it takes a little while longer to appreciate what he can do. But if you watch him over the course of 6 or 8 games, you kind of get a better appreciation for how good this guy is. And for Driussi, I wouldn't bet on him making best 11. There are a couple other, 10s or second forwards who I think are probably a little higher upside. But Driussi, that's not a knock on Driussi. He's still a really, really good player, and he might end up being the better player. There's nothing to say that I'm correct about thinking Emmanuel Reynoso is a better player than Driussi. Driussi might end up being the better player because that work rate is so high, and that ability to not just sort of be a setup man, but to be a kind of a goal poacher as well. That's a pretty nice thing to have bursting out of midfield. And I think that with the way Josh Wolf wants to play, which is really highly structured, having a guy who could be an X factor off the ball in that way can end up being the type of thing that's a difference between, 8 goals, 12 assists, really nice year, and, 12 goals, 14 assists, best 11. Holy crap, this guy is out there dominating type of season.
Yeah, there are some similar players in the league that I think are probably more talented than him. But what we saw just in that half season last year, his game IQ, his intelligence on the field, his leadership, even just like what we've seen in locker room stuff, he seems to be really well respected among the players. I would still pick him over a lot of those guys because of those intangible or kind of off the ball things that you don't always see in the highlight reels.
Absolutely. The soccer IQ is the way to think about it. And that is something that, could have a sort of an amplifying effect on the guys around him as well. And so by that, I think it was a really good signing so far. And certainly he looked at the other day too.
Yeah. Yeah. He looks pretty incredible. So I'm going to get into the instant overreaction segment of the interview. Now that we've got one game in hand. So question 1, are there 4 front offices that should feel really dumb for not taking Kip Keller in the super draft?
Yes.
Yes. All 4 of them or just some of those 4?
So first was Charlotte. Yes, definitely. Second was Cincinnati. Yes, definitely. Who had the third pick?
Is that the one that got traded?
It was either Houston or Dallas because did we end up with 3 of the top 5 inside the state of Texas?
Yeah, I think Dallas traded
Dallas
the 3.
took
Isaiah Parker,
Dallas
right?
Took Isaiah Parker third. I can actually defend that one because Parker has national team upside as an attacking left back. So I don't think Dallas should feel too dumb. I do think that Houston with the 4th pick should probably feel pretty dumb, pretty bad about that one. And it's not that I think that Kip Keller is the best center back in the world. But I think it's pretty close to a sure thing that he's going to be a good MLS player. And one thing that, and here, I mean, if you want the institutional knowledge, going back 26 years, if you have a chance to take the best domestic best domestic center back in the super draft, you should take that guy. You should, because whether it's Carlos Bocanegra, all the way back to Eddie Pope, Chad Marshall, Michael Parkhurst, if you get a guy like that, you get a guy that you can build title-winning teams around. And it's, they come in at a friendly cap number. There's no worry about learning the culture. And it's just a fact over the course of this league's history that high-level college center backs have been able to translate into MLS within a year or two. And we're seeing, we saw it with Nashville a couple of years ago when they took Jack Maher second overall. Daryl Dike was still on the board. I don't crush Nashville for taking Maher over Dike. Maher's going to be with that team for 10 years. He's probably going to be one of the better center backs in the league for 10 years. And if you can get a guy like that, I don't see the point in swinging for the fences and on an attacker, the super draft. Your ownership's always going to be willing to go out and buy you a high upside attacking player. Get that solidity there. Get that guy who you can plug and play. So, Austin fans, I think you should be probably very, very happy with what happened in this year's super draft.
And I guess we're also very, very happy and excited about Cincinnati and the result. How much of that is good Austin and how much of that is bad Cincinnati?
It looked like a pretty good combo of the both of them, though I will be a bit of a wet blanket and say that it was more Cincinnati than Austin. That first goal, sporting all the way through to the back post, like that
Yeah.
that was embarrassing. The second goal was less embarrassing, but still not very good. The third goal, I think your guys completed 5 passes in the box.
Yeah.
Like it looked like prime Barcelona right there. Like that doesn't happen against a real MLS team. Cincinnati's not a real MLS team at this point. So I think certainly be happy. 5-0 is amazing. I think that there will be growth with Austin this year. But that result this weekend was an outlier based upon the orange cones you were playing against.
So you mentioned Johan Valencia not playing the other day. Dani Pereira was who stepped in at the 6. I know that you kind of had some opinions about wanting to see Alex Ring maybe play in that 6 position, but they've been pretty vocal about the fact that he's going to be an 8 this year. He's going to play up alongside Driussi. Do you think that a player like Dani Pereira can be an effective 6 in this league against better midfielders? Because he looked damn good the other day, but I have concerns about whether or not he has the defensive bite required to actually be effective in that position throughout an entire season.
So do I. The defensive bite and the defensive range are the two things. And I think he can play there if you have an 8 next to him who's sort of all action, run everywhere, win the ball, hard man like Artur for Columbus. He would be a good example. Or like prime Roger Espinoza for Sporting Kansas City is like one of the best examples of that position being played at a high level. Pereira can do that with that type of guy. Ring is less that type of guy, or has been for the past 2 years than I think he used to be. And I think he's got an itch to push into the attack a little bit more. And when you can do that as well as he's done it for Austin, reconstitute the team around that need a little bit and go from there. And while I think Pereira will get his minutes, I do expect Valencia, who has a rep as a ball winner and as a guy who can cover ground, I would expect to see Valencia get the lion's share of those minutes at D-mid, with Pereira as kind of a fill-in for both Ring and Valencia, and maybe even Driussi a little bit, because he has some skill going forward as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, being a really good utility player at a young age is it's a valuable role to fill. And maybe in the end, he can grow into being like a full-time starter at one of those spots. But I don't think he's there yet.
Yeah, I think Dani does really well carrying the ball forward and then kind of distributing from deeper, but he's not as good defensively as we think Valencia is going to be. He's not as good in the final third as what Ring is. And so, like, wherever you put him, he's lacking a little bit of what one of those other guys can bring you. But I've said this before on the show, having a guy off the bench like Dani Pereira is not a bad thing to have. So I think there's not really a reason for Austin fans to get that up in arms about who the starter is, because they're all going to get lots of minutes. It's a long season.
Yeah. Yep.
So I wanted to ask you about this real quick, the Tomas Pochettino situation. Do you think getting rid of him after only that one season was the right move? Do you think that was a wasted opportunity to not try to hold on to him and get more out of him this year?
No, I think it was absolutely the right move. And that's what part of what I was saying about the front office being clear-eyed about assessing their team and the moves they made. Look, it takes guts to admit that you got it wrong with a DP, especially when he was the first DP signing. So it takes guts to admit that, but he did not fit. He did not make the team better. I think he's good enough to be a starter in MLS, but maybe not in this system. And when you have in Pereira, a guy who's younger and doesn't hit the cap and brings basically everything Pochettino brings, and then Valencia coming in to bring the stuff that Pochettino doesn't bring. Why would you hold on to him? So I think I commend the Austin front office for not, falling victim to the sunk cost fallacy. Like, he's a good player. He's not a good player for Austin. They moved on from him, and that's smart. And I think the team's better off for it.
Okay, the last thing I wanted to ask you about was Josh Wolf. So talking to, or like in interviews with folks who have worked with him in the past, his intelligence seems to be really highly respected, his tactical intelligence, but he really struggled with game management and maybe even some man management stuff last year. After a season of seeing him as a head coach, how do you rate him as a coach, and how long of a leash do you think he'll get this season?
I would be disappointed if he didn't get the full year. Based upon what we saw last year and having heard him speak about how he sees the game and what he wants to build there, he seems like he has a pretty high upside as a young coach, and now he has better pieces to implement his principles of play. And I think those principles of play, like, it's obviously very strong sort of positional play approach. That the fullbacks are going to get forward, and that they're going to try to build from the back. Very clearly, they're asking the center forward to do more than just poach in the box. Like, all this stuff is, it's there to be seen, and it's not a mystery at all. And I think that the way it sort of came together over the course of last season and was elevated once Driussi and Gita were signed, he knew what he was doing. Now there are some learning curve issues with the new coach, and I don't think, like you said, I don't think his game management was all that great. I hadn't heard about any man management issues, but
that's all speculation.
Okay. So. Well, it doesn't, from the outside looking in, it never looked like a broken team to me. Like, they never looked like a team that was giving up on the coach or each other. So I don't know where that speculation is coming from, but I haven't heard it. And I kind of feel like I would have. So I don't give that one much credence. Barring a 20-point train wreck of a season, you don't hire a rookie head coach with a very clear ideology for an expansion team in the expectation that you're going to have an Atlanta United or LAFC style first season, right? Like, you hire him for a project. You hire him for something long term, and to me, even unless it's just completely awful this year, even 2 years isn't long enough. And maybe that's not what the fans want to hear, but that's the reality of the game. And that's the reality of the type of approach that the front office took. And I don't necessarily think it's the wrong one. I think it's something that can work. And if I was, decision maker, I'd be looking for progress as the barometer rather than necessarily a specific point total or anything like that.
Yeah. Going back to the man management thing, I think most of what we heard revolved around Tomas Pochettino. And so maybe that's another reason he's not here anymore. But I just looking at Austin's depth this year, there were games last year where we were bringing Sebastian Berhalter, Aiden Stanley, Manny Perez. These were the guys we were bringing off in big games midweek. Like, you pull off Diego Fagundes, and who's there? It's Jared Stroud was starting for us for half the season, and he didn't even make the bench the other night. And so the fact that we have just so much more depth, even though we maybe didn't raise that top end, the depth is there. And I think it's going to make Wolf's job a little easier this year. So if we're struggling defensively in the midfield, okay, let's pull Pereira, put in Felipe. Like, we did not have that last year.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
I like Am I wrong to be optimistic about that?
No, I think you're absolutely right to be optimistic about it. And it's something that can, help the team like just weather the grind of the regular season, which can really take it out of you. And that's one. And for two, then, and this will be the Josh Wolf tie-in, is like, okay, when you have that type of depth, show me that you can use it to change a game and turn a loss into a draw or a draw into a win. I don't think he really did that last year. To be fair, there aren't a lot of coaches in MLS who I think are particularly good at that. But like, that's part of the growth process as well.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Matt. Any other last comments for Austin FC fans?
No, it's just nice to be on the show finally. I'm glad we were able to make time this time. So.
All right. Well, we both really enjoy your work. Keep it up. We'll be listening and reading all this season. But yeah, we really appreciate it.
All right. Cheers, boys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. We're excited to announce that we're doing another ticket giveaway thanks to Sage Wilson Property Group. The last one the winner ended up being a guy named Albert. He posted some photos of where his seats were. Got to be really up close to some of those second half goal celebrations. Those seats look awesome. So I am very excited to be giving them away again.
Yeah, so if you want a shot to enter, you can go to moontowersoccer.com, click on the free ticket giveaway link in the top navigation bar, or click on the link in the show notes and fill out the form. This one is going to be for the Inter Miami game on Sunday, March 6th, so we can almost guarantee better weather than the first one, but we cannot guarantee the same results. Entry must be submitted by 10 p.m. on Friday, March 4th in order to be eligible for this week's drawing.
Again, this is made possible by our friend Eric Wilson at Sage Wilson Property Group. So if you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, Texas, you should talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Property Group. And as always, Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education.
You can go to fef.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fef.law. All right, we are back. We want to thank Matt Doyle one more time for joining us. Jeremiah, let's jump into the preview of the next game against Inter Miami.
Yeah, let's do that. So Inter Miami, they're in their third season in the league. They entered along with Nashville in 2020, and I think it is very easy to say that they're the less successful of the two expansion clubs that year.
And who would have guessed that at the time, right? Like a year before the teams launched, I think you probably would have guessed Nashville is maybe like a middling team, and Inter Miami is maybe like being like an Atlanta or an LAFC, right?
Yeah, I mean, they had all the hype. They have deep pockets. They've got David Beckham, they've got Miami. They had everything going for them seemingly up front, and that just has not turned out that way. And they're really an example of how not to build MLS roster. This is, if you listen to Allocation Disorder, Sam and Paul were talking about how Charlotte is going to be awful this year, most likely. And it's because they just brought in all these people from outside MLS that thought they had a better way of doing it, and that time has been proven over and over again that doesn't work, and that's absolutely the approach that Miami took.
Yeah, so they ended up having too many DPs after their first season, got caught. There's probably teams who have done that in the past. Maybe were a little bit more sneaky about it than Miami was. But I think they technically at one point they should have had 5 players designated as DPs when you're only allowed 3. I imagine most of our listeners know that. But so they got slapped with all these fines, had to offload a bunch of guys. So Matias Pellegrini, a young guy, where did he end up going? He went back to Argentina. Is that right?
Well, originally they loaned him out to their USL club, and then I think he went back to Argentina. And that's that poor guy, when I think about, they brought him in on this DP contract. He didn't know anybody. There's a pandemic. He gets stuck. He can't go home.
Going to America, gonna make a big name for myself. And
I mean, you talk about somebody that just turned out bad for through. I mean, again, he had nothing to do with that, and just ended up in the worst possible situation. So they had all those issues last year. Yeah, and they had to make a ton of changes this year. like slash their roster budget and sort of deal with these sanctions that they got. So they've been off to a bad start. And there's this stadium thing too. So they were going to have this. They've had this soccer park concept that's I think it had like 3 different locations now that they were going to build it in. They still don't have a deal with City Council in Miami to even pull this off. It's like $1 billion stadium complex arrangement. So they're playing in Fort Lauderdale at Old Lockton Stadium still to this day. So that's just an example too of sort of how the organization has not thrived in the way that a lot of people thought they would.
Yeah. So how did Miami do in the 2021 season?
Well, in 2021, they finished 11th in the East. They were 10th in 2020, and then made the playoffs because of that weird.
Because everybody made the playoffs. Because
basically everybody made the playoffs. They were 11th, scored 36, allowed 53, so terrible goal differential. Gonzalo Higuain led them in scoring. He had 12 goals, and I think the next highest scorer on the team maybe had 4. So he was most of the offense, and which he was not the Higuain that thought he was going to come over and just like smoke cigarettes and hang out. That was his brother, right? Or was that
No,
him?
that was him.
Oh, it was him too? Okay.
Yeah. No, his brother is actually like, his brother's older, Pipa, and is like, comes off the bench for like little spot minutes. But yeah, it was Gonzalo who the quote was, "I thought I was going to go over and play with a cigarette in my mouth." 2022 season. So we mentioned them getting rid of Matias Pellegrini. They've gotten rid of more of those players this year. So Julian Carranza, who is another Argentinian guy they brought in, is now with the Union, I believe. Blaise Matuidi, who was, I believe, the 5th designated player.
Yep.
There's been no real announcement about him, but from all peripheral reports that have kind of come out, he's not on the team anymore. Rodolfo Pizarro, Mexican player that they brought in to kind of be their playmaker, he's out on loan as well.
Is he the one that's with Reber? They send somebody else to play with Pochettino too, but it's not him. I don't think so.
I think Pizarro's back in Mexico. They might have someone there, but it's not him. I'm not sure who it would be.
Oh, Pizarro's the one that went out on a free. And so they can't use his designated player spot because they got no money for his transfer. So they're not paying him, but they also can't use that roster slot.
They did get DeAndre Yedlin in, which I think DeAndre Yedlin's going to be a really good player in MLS. I don't know that a right back is going to save your team, but I do think DeAndre Yedlin's going to be really good for him. Most like MLS pundits aren't picking them to do very well this year.
I think there's no reason to believe that. And again, back to allocation disorder, I think they did get credit for having a really good offseason. Basically, it was because they just blew the whole thing up. They just kind of gave up on the roster build as opposed to sort of trying to adjust, or trying to like incrementally make changes. They just like kind of threw their hands up and said, it's time to start all over again.
With all those sanctions that they got, they were essentially had a hole dug for them. They got penalized allocation money and roster spots and things like that. And so I think they've done a good job of like getting back to zero, but looking at their roster, and I was telling Jeremiah before we started recording that like we've been paying a lot of attention to MLS for the last 2 years. I don't know who a lot of the guys who started for them on like over the weekend are. I think some of them are new to the league, but some of them, like there's Mo Adams is a guy who's been bouncing around teams for the last few years. He wasn't good enough to get minutes for the Fire 2 or 3 seasons ago, and they've been bad for a few years now. And so, I think, like I said, I think they've done well to like kind of reset their roster. But as far as like doing well this year, I don't know that there's a lot of hope for that.
Yeah, and they didn't get off to a good start. I did not watch this match. They started with a 0-0 draw versus Chicago, and from what I could tell, just from like reading online and stuff, it did not seem like a very good game.
Yeah. So, do we think Austin is going to make any changes to the lineup against Miami? I could see, like Gabrielson, maybe he'll be ready for a start, but it still seems like a little bit early to expect him to go 90. Maybe
I could see. I will predict that Gabrielson will start next to Cascante, and then the rest of the lineup will be the same as it was in game one.
Okay,
Luckily,
so Danny at the six again.
Yeah, if I'm wrong, nobody will know, right? Like, there's no record of this.
Yeah, I think we see most of the same group. Yeah, we could. I honestly would want to see Danny at the 6 again. I think we've got some tougher games coming up. I think we play Portland and then Seattle not long after this one. Maybe against a team like Seattle, I would rather see Valencia get some minutes there against a really strong midfield to have more of a ball winner in there. But against Miami, I kind of want to see Danny get a chance again, and then use Valencia as a sub, and then I want to see Gabrielson and Keller as soon as possible. Maybe this isn't the right time, but if it is the right time, I'm not going to be sad about it.
Well, we can get into a thing about that, but that's kind of goes back to when we were talking about Keller earlier. With Julio, you're going to get a couple screw ups a game. So if it was me, I'd be willing to give Keller a shot and say maybe he won't, or maybe he will screw up more than Cascante, but it seems like Josh Wolf has a lot of trust in Julio Cascante. So knowing that he's the coach, I don't think that we would see that change made this week.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. All right. Anything else before we wrap up, Jeremiah?
No, this is fun. We were worried about what might happen if we had to do a show after Austin lost to Cincinnati. So it's really exciting I've been thinking for 3 days about being able to record this and talk about all the goodness. And so hopefully we'll get the chance to do that again after the Miami match.
Yeah,
we're
for sure.
Top of the table right now in the whole
Absolutely,
league.
Yeah, that 5-0 goal differential put us at the top, didn't it?
Yep.
All right. Well, we want to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We also want to encourage you to become a member of our Patreon. We would greatly appreciate that and would be forever grateful. If you want to continue the conversation, come find us on Twitter at LVHero87 and JBentley_ATX. And then also go to the Moon Tower Soccer page and vote for your favorite Austin FC smiles. We're in the second round today, Tuesday, and then we'll be running the subsequent rounds the rest of the week. We also encourage you to visit thestrikertexas.com. What can folks look out for this week, Jeremiah?
I think Phil West, as he will write a controversial article from time to time. And this week, he wrote one about for Q2 Stadium sophomore season, consistency is key, which talked a lot about the food and about the beer. And Andy Loughnane talking about, it's an interview with Andy Loughnane. Andy talking about the wide variety of craft beer available and the affordable pricing on craft beer. I think people should just sort of take that in and then maybe read the Twitter reaction to that, because it's kind of all over the place.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. We will be back next week with a new episode of Moon Tower Soccer. We'll be reviewing the Inter Miami game and then previewing the first road game against Portland. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around. Muchas gracias. Bye bye.